Hello and welcome to a fourth line exploration. We're looking at the lines of gate 25, the gate of innocence, the gate of the spirit of the self, and this fourth line is called survival. The fourth line is a line of friendship, of networking and opportunism. Opportunism is a word some people have a bit of a problem with, but it merely means that for the fourth line, they see opportunity when it comes knocking. And their best opportunities come to them through their friends and through their network. Some people say that their opportunities should only come through their network and their friends. And this may be true for some, of course, but not necessarily for all fourth lines. We must always put the or not at the end of everything that we say. There's a fixedness in the fourth line, a one-trackedness. They are here to externalize the foundation of the first line. They have a deep resonance to the first line, and that fixedness keeps them focused on their message. They're the missionary. They can be very influential and somewhat persuasive, inherently kind, with a potential for meanness too. And this is the line of the teacher. The fourth line is social. This is the upper trigram now, and they know that there is a gate at the other end of the channel, and they want to make friends with it. And they have to learn to pace themselves, and with their socializing, they can get overwhelmed. So fatigue and burnout are markers for the fourth line. They need to balance their externalizing nature with a little of that introspection that comes from their first line resonance. So the fourth line here, it's called survival, and the lifetime learning says the nature of true innocence can be maintained regardless of circumstances. So this is something that is learned in the life process, that is a developmental process in the sense of this, it's the true nature, really. The fourth line, it's like an oak tree. It's not meant to break. And they don't bend all that much. They're very fixed. They can bend a little bit, yeah, but they're certainly not meant to break. And if they start bending too much, they will break down. They will lose their innocence. They are here to externalize. And some people get very tired with the fourth line because you can just keep getting that same one-track mind, that same fixed process coming at you. But this is what they're good at. And the only difficulty they have is when they're not being true to that. That's when it becomes annoying. And there are a lot of people who are conditioned to be fixed and to be conditioned as being fixed, if that makes sense. I know what it means in my head, but those ones can be most annoying of all because it's not actually coming with authenticity. If it's coming through conditioning, then it's not the same thing. The exaltation, the beauty of the rose in the garbage dump. Jupiter here is also exalted, the highest principles, even amongst the greatest decadence, the spiritual warrior, the innocence maintained regardless of circumstances. So this line is very unusual. It has two exaltations and no detriment. No planet in detriment, really. It's so there what you have here is as not only a fourth line that's by its nature is fixed and one-tracked, but by the nature of the line itself, it is fixed and one-tracked because there's only an exaltation. Now, there's only the ability to maintain innocence regardless of the circumstances. Oh, it's a very beautiful line. And the wonderful thing about being one-tracked is that if it stays on track, it will arrive. Just like a train, yeah, it will get there. And this is the security of this fourth line. And the whole thing about being one-pointed when you're here in an existential line is that no matter what happens to you, you are always remaining existentialist. That is the value here. Fourth lines have some important attributes simply because fourth lines can have a great deal of influence because of that one-trackness and that fixedness on their process, in whatever the process of that hexagram is. And we're talking about the innocence here within the 25. Doesn't matter what hexagram it is, the fourth line still has the same function. They're transpersonal. Here in the 25, this is the only gate that is the self pointing to the ego. And the relationship between the self and the ego is one of the most important within our vehicle. So when you have a transpersonal line in the 25th gate, this 25-4 knows the ego on the other side, knows what that ego is and what its power represents. And in that sense, it has the capacity over time, because this is an overview line, an introduction line, the nature of true innocence can be maintained regardless of circumstances. This is what it learns. The nature of true motivelessness. Here are people that are fixed. This is the harmony to the first line and the one-trackedness of that selflessness. And of course, this is the great exaltation. Again, because of the overview line, you do not start off that way, but there are at least two exaltations here to be explored. Fourth lines are the great line of the missionary. There's nothing more profound than a fourth line who is clear in the world. They can have enormous impact at a mystical level. They can have a deep influence over others. This is a kind of, could be the born-again Christian, so full of light, talking their talk so well, so fixed, so clear. What to do? It's the mechanic of the line. Fourth line is also the most unstable of the lines, which is partly why they can be so fixed. There's a force that has to be fixed, and at the same time, there's a vulnerability underneath, because they are at a point of enormous shift. There's a real, what would you call it? A flux, I suppose, here. Because this is what happens at the end of the fourth line. We find the juxtaposition, and the juxtaposition marks the beginning of a very real transpersonal process. The 4-1, which is the juxtaposition, is very, very fixed. And then it moves on from there, moves into the 5-1, into the left angle processes. So it carries a great deal of power here. The grounding coming through the 46 and the fourth line is called impact. We've just been hearing all about that, as we've heard already. The fourth line in the upper trigram with its transpersonal gifts, always trying to externalize the nature of their hexagram. They want an influence. They're designed to have an impact. And so there's a support here just through genetic continuity for the 46 to ground the 25. Being the rose in the garbage dump and watching as it blooms. Venus has moved into gate 25 today. What a wonderful place for Venus to be, and unconditional love and innocence. And this was at 2:23 this morning, and it's our current sun gate. We don't need to say much more about it here. We've been exploring it for a while now. The moon has been in gate 26 since 0608, the ego gate of the trickster. And next, the moon moves into Ajna gate 11 at 1710. This is the gate of peace, the gate of ideas, where exploring ideas can be shared with and can stimulate others. Ideas are abstract, they come and go, and this process is mainly about reflection and the possibility to conceptualize what has been experienced. And from here, the moon moves into the G center and gate 10 at 0405, treading. This is the gate of the behavior of the self. This is a roll gate that tells us how we are designed to behave. It's the gate that gives us the names of our profile lines, with a natural sense about it that if we behave as ourselves, irrespective of our environment, all our interactions, being ourselves will keep us alive within that. Because this is integration and centering, it is about personal survival. Gate 10 can have a keen sense of how other people are behaving, which can lead to some discomfort when they're confronted with behavior that maybe is considered incorrect. But it's through gate 10 that we can truly develop self-love, through accepting and loving our uniqueness, and in our turn, empowering others to find self-love. That's the fourth line. Fifth line tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining me here, and until I see you tomorrow, let me get my off button. Thank you for joining me. Go gently.